Hey guys, welcome back. So, still smoking and enjoying my 7L 320 KS, which is just a beautiful, beautiful, big and bulky pipe that I recently restored and just fell in love with. So this one is a keeper. I really enjoy it. And a shout out to 2 a.m. pipe on the patio for the inspiration for picking up the 320 KS. This is indeed a lovely pipe. Anyways, enjoying some straight Virginia flake. And for today's video is the long-awaited and much requested video about rehydrating pipe tobacco. Because should you do it? Can you do it? And how do you do it? So basically, whenever you open the tobacco that you bought in a tin or in bulk, in a jar or whatever, when the tobacco is fresh from being produced from whoever, the tobacco is kind of moist. And 9 out of 10 times, I say this all the time, the tobacco that you buy, 9 out of 10 times is too moist. When you think it's perfect for smoking, it is 9 out of 10 times still too moist. When you have trouble with bad taste, harsh taste, tongue bite, wet pipe, soggy pipe, there's a lot of variables that play into that technique and pipes and whatnot, but the very big variable is the moisture and water content inside of your tobacco. Tobacco needs to be moist to be fresh, but it doesn't need to be that moist to be smoked and to be enjoyed. So the tobacco needs to be wet to be able to store and keep for a long time. So you want that moisture in your tobacco when you're storing it, because that is the way that it keeps fresh. And the issue is, if you take that tobacco out of your container, your mason jar, your tin or whatever, it is smokable. But 9 out of 10 times, if you dry it a little bit more, you get rid of the tongue bite, you get better taste, it's easier to keep lit, you get a cooler smoke, everything just burns and tastes way better. So that was just a small step into moisture and pipe tobacco. Then comes the issue if your tobacco dries out. If you open a tin and you don't move the tobacco to a jar that is airtight, it slowly dries out. So you open up a tin. The first week it's too moist. The second week it gets a little better. The third week it's smokable. Fourth week it's perfect. The fifth week is a little bit too dry, and after like 2 months it gets too dry, and if you leave it, it becomes like cornflakes. And that usually takes up to around a year in a tin before it's completely dried out and it's unsmokable. So what do you do then? Yeah, then you can rehydrate your pipe tobacco. And moisture, water, it's evaporating. Depending on how you store your tobacco, that moisture is evaporating slow or fast or in between. So when you're talking about rehydrating, you're just inducing water and moisture back into the tobacco. What can happen, and some people is saying that when the tobacco is dried out completely, the tobacco is losing its flavor, and that can very well be the issue, because when it's drying out, the oils are starting to, I don't know, I'm not a chemist, but when it dries out, you risk the tobacco being ruined and being unsmokable. But I have found out that even rehydrating pipe tobacco that has been bone dry for years actually tastes and smokes perfect after rehydrating. On the other hand, I've tried to rehydrate tobacco that has been dry for less time, that has been destroyed and wasn't even worth smoking. So disclaimer, if you're trying to rehydrate pipe tobacco, you are risking that you're wasting your time, but I'm saying it's worth trying. So I wouldn't pay a lot of money for dried out pipe tobacco. I would accept it as a part of a pipe trade where I get it cheap, or I'm paying very little money for it, because you risk the tobacco to be unsmokable. But my experience tells me that you have very good chances. So by all means, if it's only your own tobacco that only got a little bit too dry, it is still perfect, believe me. Just rehydrate it, and I'll explain how. If it's your own tobacco and it was dry for like 6 months or so, rehydrate it, it will be perfect. If you're buying dried out tobacco that has been 20 years in a cellar, completely bone dry, take the chance. It might be amazing, it might be horrible. But try it out and I'll explain how you do it. It's very simple. You need moisture back in the tobacco. I have an example here. So here I have a little bit of some kind of unknown flake. The guy that gave it to me said that this was most likely rat race or Peterson's, and it's around 5 years old and has been kept in this plastic Ziploc bag for an unknown amount of time. And I'll try not to touch the tobacco too much, because this is, as I said, corn flakes dry. If I touch it, it crumbles up and gets into dust. So just for explaining, when I'm trying to bend this, it just cracks. It's that dry. So, but it tastes amazing. So if it's this dry, treat it carefully. If it's just too dry, not an issue. You can go about this in two ways. An aggressive way that works fast, and a more gentle way that takes time. And I would prefer the gentle way, because I'll explain. The fastest way is to just dump this out, and there's many videos on YouTube about this. Dump this on a paper towel. Take another paper towel and make that damp or moist. Put it over, leave it, and then the tobacco will suck in the moisture, and then put it in a mason jar to rest. You're done. Only issue is that the damped paper towel that is touching the tobacco, that is all brown afterwards. So you're also kind of soaking some of the goodness out of the tobacco, because you're like you're touching the tobacco with the moist towel. For me, not so good. You also risk more so by doing it like this, issues with mold and the tobacco being too wet. So I like having something that is damped from water, evaporating out in a closed container, so that evaporation now gets into the closed environment, and then the tobacco being the paper towel that is then re-soaking the moisture. Let me explain. You take a mason jar, and it needs to be a little bit too big for whatever amount of tobacco, and this is just a very small amount. Make sure that the mason jar is clean. and then fill the tobacco into the mason jar. And be careful, because this is so dry that it might crumble up. There we go. So now we have a mason jar with the bone dry tobacco. Now you take a paper towel and you damp it. You use water. If you want to be careful, you take demineralized water. That is actually the correct way, the safe way. I don't do it, and I haven't had any issues. This is just tap water, no issues. Again, two methods now. The very, very careful way is to put the damp towel over the top of the jar, put the lid on, screw it on, and then the water from inside of the towel that is now closed inside of the lid, when that starts to evaporate, it evaporates inside of the mason jar, and the tobacco will then slowly suck that moisture into it, rehydrating the tobacco. This might take a long time, and this can actually take so much time that I actually start to be a little bit, I think it takes too much time. So I found a way like in between, and this is where you need the mason jar to be larger than the tobacco, and there needs to be a lot of space between the tobacco and the lid. You take the damp towel, make sure that it doesn't drip, it just needs to be moist, and then you kind of crumble it up so it's holding on to a lot of air, being like this, and then you slowly put that in so it doesn't touch the tobacco, because I don't want to soak the tobacco from the towel. And then you close. So now you have way more moisture inside of the bowl that can evaporate inside of the bowl, and the tobacco will then suck that moisture up. And actually, you could put it upside down correctly, but then you risk the paper towel to touch the tobacco. So what I would do, I would just put this on my table like this. And I have very, very big mason jars if I have like a full tin to do this. So I'll just leave this, and then I'll come back tomorrow and remove the paper towel, check the tobacco. If it's very moist, then I'm done. If it's still too dry, I'll leave it another day. So that is basically it, guys. But then you're not quite done yet, because then I have, excuse me, what oftentimes ends up happening with this process is that you overhydrate the tobacco. So what I have here, that is actually what I'm smoking here, is another sample of Virginia flake that was bone dried just like the tobacco that I showed you, and I rehydrated it just as I showed you. What ends up is that these got a little bit too moist, but I just kept them like this because it's good for storage. So then I take it out half an hour up to an hour before I'm going to smoke it, and then I dry it out to the perfect condition before I'm going to smoke it. The last thing I'll mention is, after you rehydrate your tobacco, it only takes like 24 hours, then you have the moisture inside of the tobacco. It takes a lot of time before that rehydration kind of settles. I don't have any good way to describe it, but it's fast to get the tobacco to be wet, to feel good. But it takes a lot of time for the tobacco then to rest, find itself, and distribute the moisture, I think maybe on a molecule level, like out to every bit of corner. So even though this might be wet to the touch tomorrow, it's not ready for smoke. So when this is wet tomorrow, I'll take the damp towel out and leave the tobacco in the mason jar to rest at least a week, up to a month. And then it kind of found itself again. And then when you start to smoke it, it should be fine. And if it still tastes horrible, then you at least try it. Tobacco is so expensive, so at least you should give it a try. But I cannot stress enough the last step with waiting after you rehydrate it for letting it rest. So that is how I do it, and try it out. It's not rocket science, but it's worth it. Well, anyways, that was what I have to share with you guys on the topic of rehydrating pipe tobacco. Thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next one.